these mobility methods can be a little bit confusing, so I wanted to try and clarify some of them in some various positions to show you what the differences are in their sequencing. So the first one is going to be the Pails and Rails, and that is kind of step number one if you are looking to improve flexibility or passive range in into a direction or into a joint movement. If you are not needing any more passive range, you're only wanting to focus on the active, then you're going to be working on the ones that I show you after this, okay, there are components of the Pails and Rails in some of these, but there's different ones to it. So, to clarify, Pails and Rails, or progressive and regressive angular isometric loading, is initially a passive stretch. You are working to increase your passive range of motion into a range. So whatever position you get into, okay, we'll do a half kneeling for now. So I'm looking to improve my hip flexion. So I'm going to come into a passive hip flexion stretch, hip extension stretch, tucking the pelvis under, making sure that my engagement is only from the hip flexors and not coming from the low back. Okay, so tuck under, engage the core, the pelvis and ribcage come together. Okay, so from here, any position that you're in, right, you could be in flexion, you could be in overhead shoulder flexion, you could be in internal rotation or external rotation, whatever you're in, you're going to hold that passively for 60 seconds to 120 seconds, so 1 to 2 minutes, and this is where that increase in that passive range of motion comes from, okay? So you're holding that passive stretch. Then you're going to work actively. You're going to actively push and pull out of that range. So isometric contractions slowly ramp up, 1 to 2 pounds, away from your stretch. Then hold 10-15 seconds. This is where you're improving the strength in that range to not only for strength and safety of that joint, but also for it to allow you access to it. Okay, from there, you're going to then start to work the regressive angle, or pulling yourself deeper into the stretch and closing the angle of the joint that you're moving towards. So you're going to then pull yourself the opposite direction, slowly ramp up into it, hold 10 seconds, pulling yourself actively deeper into the stretch. You can also use gravity or an outside force, but you are also working the muscles in the direction that you're pulling, okay? So keep that in mind. So Pails and Rails is 1 to 2 minute stretch, 10 to 15 second push, and a 10-second pull. And those are isometric and isotonic contractions. That can be repeated 2 to 3 times, okay? The positional isometrics. This can be done in, again, any of the same positions that Pails and Rails can be done in. However, you're going to work isometrically in different ranges. So generally it's going to be your mid-ranges that are the most weak. However, if you're coming off of some sort of injury or wanting to improve any kind of strength at any range, you can use these positional isometrics. So let's say, for example, I have enough hip flexion, I'm not concerned about that, but I want to get really strong. I need my hamstrings to be strong, I need my glutes to be strong, I have a specific move in aerial silks that I want to do, whatever it is, okay? I want to be strong in that range. So I am going to come into that range. I'm going to hold just for a second, make sure tension is through the core, can create tension through the body. If I want, I can do various things like crushing a block to help activate the core and just create more tension, so that can work too. And then I'm going to drive down isometrically. So nothing's happening, I'm going to work the back of my leg. I'm driving the floor away from me, holding, again, 10 to 15 seconds, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Take a breath. If I want to work this range the opposite direction, I can do the same exact thing. So I would need my blocks here, okay? And then I would try and either, if that's the range that I want to work, I can hold it up and lift. It would be better if I had something to hang on to. This is a bad example. But the other example of that, you could do a side-lying arm here, right? Say I want to get stronger here, then I into external rotation. Okay, I can hold here, hold 10 seconds, relax, hold here, 10 seconds, relax, hold here, 10 seconds, relax, hold here, push into the floor, 10 seconds, relax. So if I'm just looking to generate stability and create strength through any range of motion, I can work in positional isometrics, okay? The next progression of that is passive range holds. So this is where you will come passively into a range that you are having trouble strengthening or strengthening, usually an end range, okay? So passive range hold, you're going to come into an end range position that you cannot get to actively. So I will use a different example. Here, let's go external rotation. So I have more external rotation passively than I do actively. The way I'm going to remedy this is by working passive range holds. I'm going to come into my passive range as far as I can using an outside force. In this case, it is my body weight and gravity, okay? I'm maintaining my nice long spine. From here, I'm going to now come out of that position and try to maintain the position of my hip. My focus is external hip rotation, and I want to keep that. So as I sit up out of here, I'm going to try and bring my leg with me. And you'll notice there's what's called a lag. So as I move my body back right now, I'm trying to lift, I still can't do it. As soon as I get here, now I can lift, I hold, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, set it back down, come back into that passive range. My muscles are activating, but they're just not strong enough to lift my leg up off the ground until I get here. Okay, so another thing you can do is use your hand. You can use the block if this is more comfortable for you to be a little more upright. Okay, come into here, use that, post up, try and lift, and hold. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so that is an example of a passive range hold. Same concept applies to wherever. Say I'm doing internal rotation, okay? Sitting back, I'm in a passive range here. Now I'm gonna try and pull my foot up off the floor. I can't do it yet, It's working, I feel it. And now I can do it here. So that is my lag time, okay? So I can passively do it here, passive, right? And now I can lift up. So that is the lag and the difference between that passive and active range that we are trying to diminish. The last part of this, or one of the last parts, are going to be passive range liftoffs. I'm going to use the same example here because it's easy and I'm here. So passive range liftoff would be coming to just out of that end range and trying to then lift off of it without moving anything, okay? The goal is to maintain your positioning, hold, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, come back down into it, okay? You're just out of range, so I'm not stretching any deeper into my range and working that part. I'm just coming just barely out of that end range to try and work right at that range and lift off of my block here or whatever is pushing me into that end range, which is the floor in this case. So from here, I'm going to lean forward a little bit more because I'm going to need a little bit more, and then I'm going to try and lift off, hold. I'm really working this end range muscles, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, relax down, rest as long as you worked. So that is an example of what a lift off would look like for internal rotation, same thing as external rotation. So another example, internal rotation of the shoulder. You're here, okay, so my end range passively is here, so I'm going to come out of it just a little bit, and then now to lift off of that, right, this is my block, this is my outside force, I'm going to try and pull my hand down away from that hand, maintaining every other positioning of the body. Hold, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, let it come back, take breath, hold, pull away from that block, that's the lift off, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, relax back. Okay, so I hope that helps to